I like it, or I don't like it.
It was frightening.
Cerebral British torture genius independent dramas.
A lot of women are turned on by that film.
The indoor kid lifestyle can be very rough. But I was just getting a suit made for $1,500 in Koreatown.
I have money.
When I was looking, I went toward the back.
You got a House of Cards, that shit. Welcome to the show. I am that Chris Gore. This is PodCRASH. This is the show where we get to hear a different podcast each week in which I appear as a guest. You get to discover new shows. I get to talk about a variety of topics. This week, I'm crashing a show called Notebooks on Cities and Culture, hosted by a guy named Colin Marshaell. Before we get to this week's crash, I should let you know that in another PodCRASH first, I am recording, not only am I recording this podcast just outside of Port Huron, Michigan, I am at a rest stop in Port Huron, outside of Port Huron, Michigan, where it's raining, and I'm in a car accompanied by my very special guest. This is the strangest context to record a podcast. My very special guest, Mike White, is here from the Projection Booth podcast and also from Cashiers du Cinemart magazine. And he and I just finished up our duties as on the jury at the Blue Water Film Festival.
You said duty.
I did.
I am buckled in. I'm all set to go here. Sitting at a rest stop and trying not to look too suspicious.
No, I think we do look very suspicious. It's weird. And I can confirm for everyone in the audience that, yes, men generally do not wash their hands. I wash my hands when I go to the restroom. But as we went in there, we saw a guy come out. He did not wash his hands.
No.
Didn't happen. So we should talk about how, like a lot of people listen to the show know all about my history with Film Threat and the zines. You know, it started back in the 80s and I've been doing it since I was a kid. And you started what is, I think, one of the greatest film magazines, fanzines of all time. It's been around 20 years now, Cashiers du Cinemart.
That which is high praise indeed coming from you, because I used to read Film Threat like nobody's business.
I think we were mutual fans.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, for our audience, talk about, tell me about, for those who don't know you, who you are and how you started Cashiers du Cinemart.
Well, I started Cashiers pretty much out of boredom. It was one of these, working late nights at a cable company and then working days at Blockbuster Video. So I'd use the Xerox machine at the cable company. I'd use the postage machine at the Blockbuster. So when I wasn't sending out late notices to people, I would be sending out copies of zines to folks. And yeah, just writing about anything and everything that crossed my interest. I was very much into the whole idea of finding out cool new things and being able to spread the word with folks. And just, folks, I always pictured some kid out in Bumfuck, Iowa who had no idea what the long goodbye was. And hey, here you go. Here's what we're talking about. This is something you should be checking out.
Well, not just that. Cashiers du Cinemart has a history of breaking stories and also writing about genres of movies that I didn't even know existed. I mean, just give me some of the highlights. What are the articles that you're most proud of?
Probably most proud of, I really loved this article I wrote years and years ago about Alien 3 and why it is what it is. I was just so confused when I saw Alien 3 because I loved Alien, I loved Aliens, and I didn't know how it went so wrong. I mean, a lot of people just kind of laid the blame at the feet of this David Fincher guy, first-time director, used to do commercials and stuff, and oh yeah, he's the guy that screwed it up. But I think that's just the popular myth around the film. And to see all the different versions of the screenplays that were around. So I went through and read every screenplay I could get my hands on and saw the evolution of how Alien 3 came to be, and then reading the production history and just all the nightmares that went into that. So really, I always try to go the extra mile. I'm very OCD when it comes to shit like that.
Oh, OCD. Mwah. Those are my kind of people. Tell me, what is something about Alien 3 that would really surprise me? In terms of reading those screenplays, what are some ideas that were in there that didn't make it into the final film that would shock us?
Well, they had one where it was very similar to what ended up being on the screen, but it was probably 3 or 4 versions beforehand, and instead of it being prisoners, it was monks, which, they kind of are monk-like in the way that they have their vows of chastity and all this kind of stuff. But they were monks, and they were living in a planet made out of wood, which was pretty interesting. And it was going to be directed by, I think the guy's name is Vincent Ward, who did probably 2 or 3 other films, and he has this kind of like medieval fetish going on. And so it would have been very like Chronicle for Leibowitz in space,
That's bizarre.
And they had one where it was this planetoid where it was like small town America. And I think that was Eric Red's screenplay, and at the end of it, the entire planet becomes an alien. So it just kind of that whole idea of what the alien mates with or whatever, or where the baby is in breasts is how it takes on the properties, and it basically takes on the properties of the entire planet. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of crazy.
I think that's going to be in Prometheus's.
I wouldn't be surprised. So seeing how Prometheus kind of came about, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes.
I mean, this conversation we're having right now, Mike and I were in the car. Mike very graciously offered to give me a ride to the airport. I'm rushing back to see the Breaking Bad series finale. I have not seen it yet. So this is being recorded before I've seen it. But and I was thinking, we're sitting here both talking about movies. I'm like, do you mind if we pull over to a rest stop and record a podcast? Because I've never done that.
Yeah, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, but there's also just other articles that really struck me. Like, you really go into detail in the magazine with the photo research. Like, just amazing. Like, also like foreign types of cinema that I've never heard of. Like, brag about a couple of those.
Well, yeah, we try to cover stuff from all over the place. And the last issue had a whole big thing about Philippine cinema and just the history of that, and just the different icons of Filipino cinema, which was fascinating to find out why things were the way they were. It's, you're very familiar with Italian cinema and how you kind of get onto a certain genre in Italian cinema and they just run it into the ground, the Euro spy kind of thing, the spaghetti westerns, the peplum, the sword and scandal kind of stuff. And just the way that Philippine cinema is even a little bit more derivative, but then they always look at things through like a lens of comedy, and just the way that they had 150 ripoffs of James Bond kind of films, and just the way that they would get crazier and crazier as they went along, and just there would be competing comedians going on, and then competing stunt groups, and it was great. It was Andrew Leovold, who's doing doing a documentary about Wang Wang, wrote this article, and it was just so in-depth and so amazing to read. I mean, that's one of the things I like, is that I'm not just the only writer on here. In fact, the last issue, I barely wrote anything. I'm just kind of collecting stuff from these, film writers, and just the level of detail they go into. Because the one thing I always encourage folks to do when they write for me is write about stuff that you love, that you think people should know about. Whether it's a particular title, it's a movement of cinema, it's an interview with somebody that you think had a big influence that people aren't recognizing. There's a big piece in the last one about Chuck Vincent films, about and they just focused in on the non-quote-unquote dirty Chuck Vincent films. And it's like, this is great.
I mean, to me, those are the best. The best writers are the ones that aren't writing for money. They're writing out of passion.
Exactly.
Which is basically where zines evolved. And that's also the internet.
Right.
For the most part, a chunk of people who write on the internet are not being paid to do that. And it's because I know you're a hardcore fan, but I love, you have this Gamera t-shirt on. Mm-hmm. And as we're about to leave, I noticed the vanity plate on your car says Gamera.
Right. Not Gamer A. As
someone actually said it says Gamer, thought it said Gamer A.
Yeah, I was going across the border at Canada, and the border guard's like, "Oh, you're a big gamer?" And I'm like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?"
Gamera.
Like, not really. He's like, "Oh, well, your license plate says Gamer A," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." And I'm like, "No, that's Gamera, the hero to all children, flying turtle."
You could say a gamer was taken,
right?
Sorry. But interestingly, the way you and I met was also through a set of circumstances involving Quentin Tarantino. You have to tell that story because it's an amazing story, an amazing expose that you... What I thought was brilliant about it is you didn't just write about it, you made a video essay called "Who Do You Think You're Fooling?"
Right.
Which ended up like just becoming this. It was this video evidence that's so damning that basically Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs is really based on the last 30 minutes of a film directed by Ringo Lam, Hong Kong director, his film City on Fire. Now, this is widely known, but you were the person to break this in the like right around when Reservoir Dogs first came out, and you edited together this video that is just shocking. I know you can find it on YouTube, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's on YouTube, and it's this, you see a scene from Reservoir Dogs, and then you see split screen, there's City on Fire, and it's compositionally what the guys are wearing. I mean, it's amazing. Tell me how you ran across that, and then you know, you sent that to me at Film Threat.
Right.
And we wrote about your thing. I mean, it was amazing. So, yeah.
Well, it was a friend of mine. We were both in film school at U of M at the same time, and he came in. We were huge fans of Reservoir Dogs because it was just pretty much one of these, like, lit a fire under so many people's ass when it came to young filmmakers. There's been movies like that before, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, or Blood Simple. As you go through the generations, everybody's got that film, and for us, it was Reservoir Dogs. And he came in and he was like, oh, yeah, I read this thing in Empire, this British film magazine. He says, and it's comparing all these scenes from City on Fire with this movie, Reservoir Dogs with this movie City on Fire. And I was like, oh, no way. No way. You can't, Quentin Tarantino is so open about his influences. He's always talking about, the movies that really, did it for him. He's talking about The Killing. He's talking about, Asphalt Jungle. He's talking about Red Line 5000, all these things, all these Monty Hellman films and stuff. No way, no way. But I was so intrigued, I had to find a Chinese grocery store that rented VHS tapes, went all the way out, from Ann Arbor out to Greenfield and 8 Mile, and go through all these stacks of VHS tapes until I find City on Fire. Thank God they had it. And then showing that to my housemates. Really what did it was this whole idea of showing City on Fire to my housemates, and they're like, yeah, okay, I can see some similarities. And I'm like, no, it's exactly the same. And so that's what motivated me to go into the edit bay at U of M and cut together the first draft of Who Do You Think You're Fooling, where I took those particular scenes and said, listen, this is this, and then this happens, and this happens. And I took basically the entire robbery, which you don't see in Reservoir Dogs, but you do see on City on Fire, the build-up to the actual robbery and then the aftermath, and just took that and condensed it down to about 10 minutes. And then, sent it over to you guys because you were writing about Tarantino at the time. And then I heard later on that you would send out copies of it to different reporters and just mark it evidence.
Well, it's weird because you ended up doing a sequel to it which was all about Pulp Fiction,
right?
And all the influences, which was from a lot of different exploitation films, including the famous Speech.
Yeah, from the Ezekiel 25:17. Which Tarantino had actually tried to fit into other stuff before. His one of his early drafts of From Dusk Till Dawn had the preacher character, who was played by Harvey Keitel finally, doing the whole Ezekiel 25:17. It's like one of these, this is cool, I have to find a way to put it in there. But it was from the opening of a Sonny Chiba film called The Bodyguard, had this as an opening scroll. And because people always say, dickhead, it's from the Bible. And I'm like, no, actually, it's rewritten by the people that did the Sonny Chiba film, and that's the version that Tarantino is using.
He didn't even use the correct version of the Bible.
He didn't use the Bible, no.
Wow.
So people can't come to me and say, oh, yeah, he copied it out of the Bible, dumbass. So.
Well, what's weird is had Tarantino done nothing else after Reservoir Dogs or even Pulp Fiction, you could say, he was copying these movies. But I feel like he's the type of filmmaker, he's certainly a little bit maybe more than paying homage early in his career. But I think had he gone on to do nothing, we could have written him off. But I think when you look at, there's certainly influences in all of his films to previous movies, but he evolves it in such a way that it feels original. I mean, you could go back to the original Star Wars, and George Lucas lifted so many things from so many, The Searchers.
Hidden Fortress.
Yeah, Westerns. So I think when a filmmaker can take, here's an idea from the past, I'm going to evolve it and make it into something new. And I think Quentin Tarantino has proven himself in his career. He's definitely did not turn out to be a flash in the pan, that guy.
No.
Actually, you know what? Pretty good, Quentin Tarantino. Not bad. So yeah, but that's how we met. And then years later, oddly enough, I ended up hosting this TV show on IFC called Ultimate Film Fanatic.
Right.
And tragically, one of the things about it, because I had to go to this game school camp to learn how to host a game show. It was weird. And they would just ask me, I'd look at a list of names and like cities, and they'd say, do you know any of these people? No. Because you can't, as a host working on the show, know anyone. And I had to admit, Mike White is from Michigan, blah, blah, blah. And you were a contestant, supposed to be a contestant on Ultimate Film Fanatic on IFC. And I had to say, no, I know this guy. I feel bad. And at that time, we had never actually physically met.
No.
Matt, I remember being scared of you from seeing photos of you, and you're the nicest guy. But if you just saw a picture of you, I'd think, oh man, this guy's a shit kicker. This guy is a shit kicker. And it's like, nah, we're just movie geeks.
Yeah.
And another thing, hey, could you hold this for a second?
Yeah.
I'm asking Mike to hold the Zoom recorder while I open a Verner's, which
that. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's ginger ale. There's a very specific kind of ginger ale. You can get in other places other than Michigan, but Verner's has a very specific taste. Great thing to make a Boston cooler out of.
Which is not one of those weird sexual terms like a hot Carlos or something.
Right. But before we got on this conversation, we were talking about some of the highlights of some other articles that you've written for Cashiers du Cinemart, and of course you have the book.
Right, yeah, Impossibly Funky.
Impossibly Funky is the name of the book, which is a collection of some of the best essays through the history of Cashiers du Cinemart. And I wrote the foreword for the book in which I talk about this whole Ultimate Film Fanatic situation. And so I'm the reason you weren't on the show. And then they ended up getting a replacement. I don't think she went very far, whoever they had replace you.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that was.
Didn't work out. But a lot of Michigan people on that show. A lot of Michigan. I know there's a weird thing of like, I think being in Michigan, maybe it's the weather, because the weather is 9 months of the year pretty miserable. Mm-hmm. And even the summer, it gets a little muggy.
Yes.
That staying indoors and watching movies, and there's a lot of movie fans. A lot of people who work in film move from Michigan to Los Angeles. We call it the Michigan Mafia. Mm-hmm. And it's, I've said it many times. It's funny, you meet a lot of people from Michigan. Okay, so we have to talk about the Blue Water Film Festival.
Yes.
Yeah, which is an amazing event. Right in Port Huron, right across from Canada. You can actually take a bridge to Canada to go gambling. And they show films, but maybe you can hear this. It's raining. Mm-hmm. Doing a podcast in a car at a rest stop in the rain. So this is happening. But Blue Water shows films by Michigan filmmakers, and oddly enough, a lot of horror and a lot of comedy. Mm-hmm. So what's your assessment? What's your takeaway from what you saw at Blue Water? Because you and I both watched all the films.
Yeah, I saw a lot of great stuff. I don't know if it's just that production values have gone up with the level of equipment or what it is, but yeah, just a lot of top-rate stuff. I really just can't get over, looking at this stuff. And what I really like, too, is that you get so many personal stories.
Right.
One of the winners, Downriver, it felt like a very personal story that was being told. One of the other winners, The Whistle, was the guy broke down while he was accepting his award. That was awesome.
Right.
It's like the one time you're happy to see tears on somebody's face.
Yeah.
And then Abed, the third winner.
We have to talk about Abed.
Holy cow.
Okay, Abed is this short. It's like, how long is it?
It's about 50 minutes long.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long for a short.
It's a long short.
And it's set in seemingly George Romero's zombie universe. And it involves God, I don't want to ruin it, but it is something you have never seen in a movie. Let me just say, graphic zombie having sex with a woman, and it's consensual.
Yeah,
and I don't know how much more we should even say about it, but it's a movie that this short film, you have to seek out Abed. I mean, it seems like they're building it up to be a feature.
I would hope so, because I would watch a feature version of that, and you get the past interweaved with the present. You get this kind of religious angle going on at the same time, and just beautifully shot. I think it won for best cinematography. And just, absolutely gorgeous and disturbing as hell.
What I like about it, the way it starts out kind of slow, it's like, okay, you realize it's a zombie universe, but also people are not particularly, they're like, just, there's another zombie. It's kind of like a stray dog.
Right.
They're just, because they're in the countryside, the cities are impossible to live in, but, it's like, oh, we'll just take care of that later. It's not a big deal. It's just like, just make sure you don't get bit. It's not, they're almost like it's a matter of fact zombie world. This is the world we live in now. It sucks. Society's broken down, but we have to live our everyday lives. So it actually portrays the mundane in a really fascinating way. So yeah, that one is worse. And there was another one that was a comedy called Day Planner of the Dead.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, that one was really fun. So it's interesting to see, like, still Michigan is a hotbed of horror. I mean, Sam Raimi coming from Michigan with the Evil Dead films. I just think there's something about this place that springs forth horror.
Right. Well, where we're sitting right now, these beautiful woods and everything, and you could shoot a movie 20 yards from here, you wouldn't even know there was civilization around.
Yeah, you could literally just pull off the freeway and shoot a horror movie. It's amazing. Yeah. So, in fact, we could shoot a rest stop of death. A rest stop of death.
We have everything we need right here.
We have everything we need. It's all set at a rest stop, and it's the consequences. Because I think what I love about horror films is the consequences for doing things like unprotected or premarital sex was always like a big thing of like, well, if they had premarital sex, they're gonna die. That's the couple that's gonna get killed. I think it should be the guys that don't wash their hands. And somehow, if you don't wash your hands at the rest stop, you're gonna die.
You're marked.
Yes. You're marked for they can smell, the creatures can smell the urine on your fingers. And they come after you to kill you.
They got coffee, they got ice cream, and they got a shitter here. I am all set.
The weird thing is, we were just saying, like, if this was a zombie thing, we could close this up, pretty much survive a week.
Yeah.
We would be sick of the food, but we'd be fine. But Mike, where can people find you, like, online and find the magazine?
Well, they can still find the magazine over at impossiblefunky.com. And we'll have a new issue out hopefully by the end of the year, and I'll be putting that out as either print on demand or Kindle or both, do the iBook thing, which is just kind of the way of the world, with the whole printing costs and everything. And can find the podcast over at projection-booth.com, which, if you don't mind, I'd love to brag about the podcast for a little bit.
Yes, please. Yeah, no, you have had some exceptional episodes of your podcast. Like, you get amazing guests and topics, like stuff that's speaking to your OCD, which I love. So, what are some of the what you would consider? And before we get to that, you have impossiblefunky.com. You registered that. Did you register it on GoDaddy?
No, it's a friend of mine.
Well, if you want to support this show, PodCRASH, you want to support me, go to GoDaddy.com, enter the offer code PodCRASH. Helps me out, gets you a discount. Just remember GoDaddy.com. And then also, I might say something else that happened at the Blue Water Film Festival. I did a stand-up comedy show.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Thank you very much. It was a blast. Did it with a whole group of other comedians. If you also want to support the show, go to celebrittiespoop.com, pick up my comedy album. You can get Celebrities Poop on Amazon. You can get it on iTunes. You can also get the book and comedy album, and you'll get the PodCRASH fan club kit, but only available at celebrittiespoop.com. Sorry to interrupt you. I forgot that I had to get these plugs in.
No, that's fine.
It's better to get them deeper into the show, I guess. But tell me something. Your podcast, the guests that you line up and the topics that you put. I mean, when you do a podcast about a movie, it's pretty much no reason for anyone else to do one.
So, I would like to think that's quite a high compliment.
But tell me about some of like your favorite episodes that you.
Well, we did one. I was not a big fan of Eyes Wide Shut. And we did an episode about Eyes Wide Shut right around Christmas because it's a perfect Christmas movie. And, God, we went through the whole damn movie pretty much scene by scene and just kind of examining what it is and why things are the way they are. And then talked to an expert over at the Kubrick Archives, and she got to tell us all about kind of the making of the film and just gave us an insider's perspective and talked about what is in the Kubrick archive. I mean, she had put together at least one or two books from the archives, so that was great. And recently we did one about Sorcerer, and we had William Friedkin on there, which was terrific, and interviewed him primarily about Sorcerer, but also a little bit about some of his other films, talked to him a little bit about The Exorcist, talked a little bit about Cruising, and people have just been really happy with that interview, which makes me very ecstatic.
What was one of the best guests you ever had on the show?
Oh, best guest. We talked about Abar, the first black Superman, way back on, like, I think episode 2, and we tracked down Tobar Mayo, the guy that played Abar.
Are you talking about Superman? The first black Superman in what? What was it?
That was the name of the movie. It was Abar, the first black Superman.
Oh my God! I've never heard of this
film. Oh, it is so good.
Okay, now I have to find it.
Oh, it is so good, and it came out on Scorpion Releasing, so you can find it on DVD. Beautiful transfer, looks great. Yeah, it's this blaxploitation film about this guy who gets superpowers. He's got this doctor out in the suburbs, this black doctor who's out in the white suburbs. And all the white people are freaking out. They're freaking out so much that they announce on the radio that this black family has moved into this white neighborhood. And they bring in Abar. He's the leader of this Black Liberation Front, and he ends up getting this drug injected into him, and he gains superpowers. And it's great because his superpowers include such things as convincing these black kids to, rather than selling drugs, to go to high school and graduate. Or he humiliates this minister who has been kind of skimming off the top, and so he takes away his car and gives him like a horse-drawn buggy instead. And his superpowers manifest in such a way that it's all these just close-ups of his eyes with this like noise going on. It's amazing. But we tracked down Tobar and did an interview with him, and that was great to talk to him about pretty much his whole career, because he had a really bizarre career of what he was in. He has like a tiny role in Escape from New York, which was a lot bigger, then it got cut down, and he was in one a Bob Chin film called Panama Red. And he was in one about, it was like I can't remember what the name of it is. It was something like The Amorous Genie. It was a porn film. That was one of his first roles. And he was talking about, when his sister found out that he was in a porn movie and stuff. So,
oh my
great
God.
to talk to this guy. And yeah, that's what I love, is just tracking down people that were involved with these movies in some direct way, or folks that are experts on these films. I mean, talking to Tanya Modleski, one of the greatest film writers that I know of, and talking to her about Hitchcock when we discussed Shadow of a Doubt. And like I said, we don't just do okay, here's Shadow of a Doubt. We talked about the remakes that there were of it and the films that were influenced by it. When we talked about Sorcerer, of course, we talked about Wages of Fear, but we also talked about a film called Violent Road with Brian Keith, which was exactly the same story. These guys trying to drive these rocket fuel components through small town America kind of thing. Total remake of Wages of Fear, but no credit whatsoever was given to the writer.
So Quentin Tarantino's not the only one that is inspired by films.
That happened a lot in the 50s. It was kind of great. So seeing these kind of low-rent American remakes of classic films that were happening back then was terrific.
Wow. Well, Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Sure.
I really appreciate it, and I'll be back to Blue Water next year.
All right. I look forward to it.
I hope we'll be doing the jury duties again.
I hope so.
Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to tell you about this week's Crash, but after the clips for the Crash, this notebooks on cities and culture, I will be in California because I'm a jet setter, because you're taking me to the airport. I'm going to get to the airport. I'm going to get back home. I'm going to watch the series finale of Breaking Bad, and after you hear the clips for Notebooks on City and Culture, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the Breaking Bad series finale, which of course is going to go up post the screening of it. So there's not going to be spoilers here.
I am the one who knocks.
So tread lightly when you listen to this show. But let me tell you about Notebooks on Cities and Culture. It's hosted by a guy named Colin Marshaell, and Colin wrote an article. This is how I met him. He wrote an article in his Pod Thoughts column on MaximumFun.org, and he wrote an article about PodCRASH and how he loved it and hated it, which I would agree with him. I think after a while I kind of get sick of me being on podcasts. I like to talk to interesting people. You know what? Maybe I'll even quit my own podcast. I'm coming up on 100 episodes. It sounds like a good time to kind of walk away. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking maybe an evolution of PodCRASH, but in any case,
PodCRASH without that Chris Gore.
Yeah, that could happen. But Colin interviews cultural creators, internationalists, and observers in Los Angeles, and I guess he's followed my career in film and whatnot. And he appeared on episode 73 of PodCRASH. I had him actually host the show. So here it is: clips from notebooks on cities and culture, hosted by Colin Marshaell. Give it a listen, and after, my thoughts on the Breaking Bad series finale.
How was it editing Video Games Magazine, by the way?
Oh my God, you really delved deep into my... is that even on my wiki? That's bizarre.
I don't know. How was it? How was it though? It was a hot time in video games, wasn't it? The mid-90s.
This was the mid-90s, and I was doing Film Threat magazine for Larry Flynt, because I began working for Larry Flynt as a writer on Hustler magazine. I wrote comedy and humor for Larry, and then I sold him Film Threat magazine, and then I'd hang out with the guys from Video Games magazine because they had a full stand-up arcade machine in their offices, and I was better at video games than these guys.
Playing like an NBA Jam against them or something?
It was like everything was like a Neo Geo machine. Oh, sure. So it was like Super Sliders, which is a soccer game.
Legend of Success Joe? Metal Slug?
World of Heroes.
World of Heroes. Oh,
yeah, all those Neo Geo games. So I was just really good at the games, and I'd be like, hey, thanks for letting me play games, guys. I got to get back to work. And then I was offered the position to be the editor of Video Games magazine, and I did that. And I just wanted to make it interesting to me and sort of leak some irreverent stuff into it. I did get in a bit of trouble once I wrote an editorial explaining. Oh God, this is a long story. Are we going to get into this? Daniel Lundgren, who was Attorney General of the state of California at the time, had sent out a letter to the video game industry basically warning that if you don't begin to curb the violence in video games, if you don't begin to police yourselves, we have the option to police you. It was a warning letter to the industry. It was frightening, frankly. And I explained to him,
Soviet.
Yeah, and I explained to him via an editorial in my magazine, which was illustrated by a finishing move for Mortal Kombat, in which Daniel Lundgren's head was head was placed onto a bloody spine.
As was the style of the time.
Yes, as was the style of the time. And I wrote this editorial about explaining that you don't really understand video games, that violence in video games can't be traced to violent acts in real life. In fact, if you actually did a real scientific study, you'd find that the Bible to be a more dangerous document than a video game. And I explained that think of fighting video games as a form of high-speed chess. Chess, you need to anticipate the opponent's move three moves ahead before you make your own moves. So you're on the defense and offense constantly. And I tried to draw the analogy between button mashing. The people that are button mashers, they don't succeed at video games. The people who are strategic and really thoughtfully think it through and have fast fingers do well. So, unbeknownst to me, I began receiving a bunch of phone calls after this editorial came out from people from the New York Times, people from major newspapers across the country saying, so what's your comment about Daniel Lundgren's response to you? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what I'm responding to. He responded to my editorial in the magazine with a letter that he faxed to 300 media outlets before I'd received a copy of it. He did not send it to me. He sent it to me by normal post. Oh, so I received it. He spent a stamp, which I actually think at the time faxing was expensive.
Talking 1993 for those born in 1993 listening.
93, 94, like right around there. So in any case, it ended up, so I responded to what he said. He basically responded to my editorial. And then, I actually grew some respect for him because he actually came to the offices of Video Games magazine. They sent in that's a train, by the way. We should definitely know. We're in Glassell Park, but the train goes by about every 10 minutes.
Right. So I wrote it here. It got me here. I'll grant it that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it'll be a running theme, and it'll be running outside my door. But So I do respect the fact that he actually came to the video game magazine's offices and we demoed for him some games. It was funny though, having the Attorney General of the state of California come up. They sent an advance team. They had like security at every door. So like his path, it was really kind of scary. Like, wow, I know you're just the Attorney General, but come on,
right.
You need this many people, and we were very I respect the fact he came out. He spent like a half an hour. We took pictures. He didn't have any big publicity behind it. We just wanted to show him, here's what games are. Here's, he expressed his point of view, which is, I think that this affects kids adversely. And I said, well, it's more of a parenting issue. If you're parenting by just turning on a screen, that's not parenting.
I'll ask you this, with the issue of liking and disliking. You've been talking about movies and comics and culture for,
Can I stop you for a second? Could you respond to Sean?
This is it's coming up.
Good. Yeah, this is because he was just confused. I think it was just because it's I think we live in a culture, to explain probably why he got confused. We live in a culture where we've simplified things down to thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
5 stars, 0 stars.
And I should note, the late Roger Ebert, best known for the thumbs, hated them.
Yeah, he hated them as well. And there's a scale. It's like 2 thumbs way up. Too big. I mean, like, he has a whole thing and he hated it as well. I always despised it. I did a 1 through 10 rating system when forced to on Film Threat. With Film Threat magazine, we did 1 through 10. We did, when we did the webs, we did 1 through 10 in the magazine, then we did 5 stars. It was like, well, it's 4 stars is the thing. Well, 4 stars doesn't give me a range. At least I have 5 stars. I've got, 4.5, 3.5. You've got more of a broad range because I really want to be a cheerleader for indie film, at least at the time that I was doing it, and that was the vision for Film Threat. I think indie film has evolved now. I don't know what the industry is definitely going through a weird phase where it's like you've got a lot of studios borrowing ideas from indie film and whatnot. But I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your statement again. Oh my God!
It's partly a question because I say you've spent so long in your career talking about movies and comics and evaluating these artifacts of culture. As well as I do, that the interesting thing to say about any of that stuff is never, I like it or I don't like it. It's never like, yeah or no. It's always something other than your gut reaction, right?
For me, yes. And also it's something like, with certain movies, I'm not sure. I just watched Blade Runner last night.
Always a worthwhile pursuit to my mind.
Yeah. And one of those things I recall as I was watching it, that I wasn't sure if I liked it when I first saw it. I mean, I saw it as a kid. I was a teenager and saw it in the theater. And of course, this is, come on, this is Han Solo, he's Han Solo. He's Indiana Jones. It's Blade Runner. And it was such a strange, I wasn't sure how I should feel at the end. Right. I mean, and so that's how I remember when I first saw the movie. I mean, now I see it and I'm thinking it's beautiful. It's one of the most artfully made science fiction films ever, and it's endured to today as something that's worthwhile, whereas Krull, which came out around the same period, and Black Hole, not so much. I remember those films, and I think there's sort of interesting kitsch from the 80s, but those movies don't have the same kind of impact because, they're real. I mean, Krull is a fantasy, and Black Hole is just like a bad holdover from the It's like a holdover from the way Disney used to make movies in the 50s. It felt like it was out of time, not in a good timeless sense, but in a almost Mad Men sense. Like it was trying to they were trying to make a 50s Disney adventure movie in space and trying to rip off too many aspects of George Lucas's Star Wars. But Blade Runner, like to today, it's funny because you look at it today and you think, wow, that is Los Angeles now, with the exception of flying cars. A lot of the stuff that's in there, and replicants, although there are, you can buy full animatronic fuck dolls, right? They make them.
Oh, the air dolls. We were just
what are they called? Love dolls?
We were speaking about Japanese innovations in lap pillows shaped like laps and whatnot. But yes, they're very far along in that regard as well.
Yeah, they are. They are. So, so I feel like it's a flawed scale, and also your impression of a movie can change. A movie that you didn't like at a certain stage of life, you can love later, or a movie you loved when you were a kid, and then you see it later and you think, oh my God, that's a piece of shit. Seriously, so you have that kind of reversal. It's a reflection of you, it's a reflection of your taste, and it's a reflection of a stage of life, whether you see a movie, you may not be ready to see certain movies,
Blade Runner leaves us not knowing how to feel, and I think of other movies you've mentioned liking. Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master recently doesn't leave us knowing how to feel, and I think we respect both of those movies for that. The respect took a longer time to come for Blade Runner, and it's taking a little longer than maybe for some movies for The Master, but it will come. And I think it's the same for anything, for an essay, for a podcast, for a comic book. The ones you like in the long term don't tell you, hey, you should love PodCRASH because I do, and hey, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like they don't answer everything for you. They don't lead you to and here's how you're supposed to feel. Yes. Boop. The button.
The violins tell you.
Yeah, the violins. Yeah, the music sort of dictating your emotions is irritating. But yeah, and so many movies do that now. Mainstream it's hard for a film to come out now that can have ambiguous feelings. And you're right about The Master. I mean, that one is it's one of those also that it leaves you feeling like you don't know how to feel, right. Which I think is which means I think it really touched something probably uncomfortable in a way that makes me want to revisit films that are like that. That would be a great list of movies where because I love those things on Netflix, when they go they really break it down to these movies that you don't know how you should feel about it, that have women dressed as wasps.
Yeah,
what?
Yeah. I got to cerebral British torture genius independent dramas one time, and I was like, well, let's go for it.
I love that. I love that about Netflix, which I was so surprised when that whole thing went down with Netflix changing their pricing structure and going streaming. I'm thinking all I thought to myself when this was blowing up on the internet with people complaining about the pricing was, do you realize what you pay? You pay basically what it costs to go to one movie to watch hundreds of hours of movies. It's ridiculous. If you watched one streaming movie a month, or two, let's say two now, streaming movies a month on Netflix, it's still a better value than your VOD purchase. So that really, I feel that was, that must have been some sort of attack by Netflix competitors trying to see if they were vulnerable. But I love their initiative now to do original programming. We've got the Eli Roth series coming out soon. It may have already started. There's the, House of Cards, which I thought was brilliant. Yes. Which has now spawned for me, a new phrase that I tell friends. A friend will be having an issue at work, and I got some obstacle in front of them, and I'll say, "You got a House of Cards that shit." You have to House of Cards that shit because the whole thing is that the beginning of it, he gets, Kevin Spacey's character gets screwed out of being Secretary of State by the new president. And is so angered by this, he sets in motion a series of events that will lead to his, I don't want to say revenge, but his comeuppance. And it's amazing. It leaves you wanting more too. Although I keep hearing, and this is typical, the British series was much better. You should watch it's like, I'll watch it. I'll watch the British series, but the Spacey one was amazing. So. You got a House of Cards that shit. How did you get interested in alt culture everything? We are tribe, the tribe of people that are interested in things that are alternate, or just not the choices that are the ones at the very top of the menu. The specials of the day.
Right.
How did you get into that?
Well, it's not that different from you, I don't think, because it was film. I was growing up in Seattle, where there's a more robust revival cinema scene than you might expect. Landmark has a lot of theaters there, and in those days they were often bringing films from countries I didn't usually see films from, and older stuff. Seeing a movie that wasn't brand new in a theater was, at 14, very exciting to me. It sounds like
tell me about one of those movies.
Sometimes, let me think of the most mainstream one I can, and it'll be relatable. Mad Max. Seeing Mad Max in a theater,
the original Mad Max.
Yeah, the first one, which I guess is less mainstream, come to think of it, than some movies. Right. Seeing the first Mad Max in a theater, I was like, this is possible. Then seeing what else is mainstream? Kubrick, a good.
Why do you have to say mainstream? It doesn't have to be mainstream.
Well,
anything.
Because I'm using the most mainstream example, because when you're a teenager, you don't want to say you were. I was watching Jacques Rivette only at age 14. I know. I want to use.
What's wrong with that? I think that's amazing.
I want to use examples here. I want to use So I remember one date.
Forget relatable examples. What is the most obscure thing that you think you saw?
Well, I'll finish this sentence. I remember a date I was on at 14 or 15 that was a double bill of The Shining and A Clockwork Orange at the Varsity in Seattle. So that's the kind of kid I was, I suppose.
A date?
Yeah, a date.
A date? Because when I think Clockwork Orange, and when I think the movie Singing in the Rain, I'm thinking rape. I'm thinking rape. I can't listen to the song Singing in the Rain without thinking rape.
Yeah, that overwrites it to some extent for me as well as for her. But
how did you do on the date?
It was fine. 3-year relationship out of it.
Oh, wow.
But,
and also because women, for some reason, are really turned on by that movie. I don't know a woman out there that hasn't seen Clockwork Orange that doesn't think like that they were not turned on by that film. There's something about Malcolm McDowell's very compelling, and of course he has a threesome in it. Yes. He has, there's multiple rape scenes. Right. And for some reason, a lot of women are turned on by that film. And that's a whole other argument. And now, I'm sure I've derailed the podcast. I definitely crashed it.
No, because when you're into film, like I was in Seattle or you were in Michigan, in America anyway, Los Angeles becomes part of your consciousness, because you see it in so many movies as a setting or as simply a backdrop, and movies come from there in America. And it eventually became the city that fascinated me the most because I just seen it represented so much and knew what kind of culture came from there. I recall you saying on PodCRASH that you came to Los Angeles when you thought you faced a choice, New York or Los Angeles, and Los Angeles didn't smell like pee and was less expensive. So you came here. Was that the extent of it?
Yes, although I would tell you this, that there are places in Los Angeles that do smell like quite a bit like urine. It was more affordable. I mean, it was really, LA was more affordable. The weather, I grew up in a winter environment. I didn't wish to go from one winter environment to another one. I mean, I'd suffered through, ice scrapers. I'm sure you know what that is. Yes. You scrape the ice and the frost off of your windshield. I mean, I love the winter, and my only issue with winter environments, my only issue with it is it just goes on too long. It goes on way too long. That those months they just seem to crawl by. So, which I think is probably why a lot of people in Michigan are film fanatics, is because you're stuck in this environment. Well, what are we going to do? Well, let's watch a movie, right? Because you don't have you can't just go outdoors or go, do outdoor activity. Not that I do any outdoor activity. I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. I am not someone who outdoor activity. I'm an indoor kid, which I think explains the fact that an indoor kid who never smoked. So explains the fact that I have very few wrinkles at my age.
The indoor kid lifestyle can be very rough on some. when you pass a certain age, an indoor kid, sometimes they show signs of, they show battle scars, shall we say. Yeah.
That's like my vehicle. This is actually one of the bad things about LA is your car will get dents and dings if you park somewhere in LA. And I finally just had to get over it. I've only bought a new car once in my entire existence, a brand new car. And I remember the week I got a little ding on it because I parked too close to some guy and he was opening his door. The guy he wasn't trying to do anything intentionally. Right. I remember being so upset that, I got a ding. Now I look at that as a way to kind of reprogram my brain. Any ding, scratch, whatever my car, it's battle damage.
Right, exactly.
My car is battle damaged. It's way cooler way of thinking of it than, having to have a perfect car. Speaking of that, I got a scratch on my car, a really bad scratch on the back of my car. Someone scraped it in a parking lot. Typical. All the damage to my car has been my car was parked, it was there, it was fine. I come back, there's a scratch.
Right.
That's LA. We all have cars, and some people are good at driving them, and some are not.
I don't have one.
Oh, well, I love being somewhere where I don't need to have a car. Yeah. I would love to not have to have a car. I think it's a better way to live. Anyways. So I took there's this scrape on the back of my car in order to get rid of the scrape, because I had people coming up to me going like, "Hey man, I can fix that. Like for $400, I'll fix it for you." And I'm like, $400? Forget that. So I found on Etsy that you could buy a vinyl bats that you could put on your wall as like a design. Right. And I thought, well, will those go on cars? So I bought 2 sets of vinyl bats, one swarm going one way and one swarm going the other way. and I just put them on the rear quarter panels of my car, and it looks badass. Instead of flames off the back wheel, I've got a swarm of bats. I am a Batman fan. You're in my place.
Yes, there's a bat on the number above the number of your place. When I was looking, I went toward the bat.
Yes, so that's how. See, I figured people would find it that way. It's that and the dog bowl outside my door, even though I don't have a dog. But I, there's obviously, you'll see I've got like a big Batman collection of stuff that I've obtained through the years. It's some of it I bought, but mostly gifts actually from friends. I'm easy to buy for. Batman, Star Wars, or porn. You're going to interview me, but like let's get to know you.
What did you want to know?
Well, I want to know, like you mentioned Seattle and you grew up a film fan. Is the subject of your podcast mostly film? And you say also you've recorded episodes all over. You travel.
It's not mostly film, but I have talked to filmmakers and film people and people about film. It tends to be creators and observers of all kinds in various cities, mostly Los Angeles because I live here, but about the work they do and the cities they do it in. So you'll notice we've talked about Los Angeles as well. I don't know.
But are you using this? Just be completely honest. I'll be honest with you.
Sure.
I started Film Threat mainly as a way to I wanted to have a way to rally against my what I thought about the film industry. But secondly, I really just wanted to meet my heroes.
Oh, sure.
And in the time I did Film Threat, I got to meet people like David Lynch, just so many of the people that I admired, Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
It was just an opportunity for me to meet and an excuse really to relate to and talk to people like Steven Soderbergh, Spike Lee, just people who were my heroes in the world of film, Jim Jarmusch. So are you using this podcast as an excuse to meet your heroes?
I mean, who do you know successful who hasn't had the stage of their career where they found an excuse to meet people? Do you know what I mean? Or to meet people who were engaged with the same type of things they are, but farther along, to meet people up the hierarchy from them. Do you know what I mean? I think everybody has that thing, don't they?
Yes, they do. I'm saying I do. Do you?
I wouldn't say excuse, but it seems like
it's a side benefit?
Well, considering the entire core of the project has always been just me talking to people, I guess it's hard to draw a line between side benefit, excuse for X, Y, or Z, and the entire core of the project. You know what I mean? It's like as if I'm not meeting people, I don't have a show, right?
Right.
So there's that too. But did you conceive of the form of your career as being about you talking to people? I mean, that might be the difference. Or was it just like, I want to work with movies. I want to write about movies, talk about movies, and hey, I might get to meet some cool people as well.
I just wanted to be around movies. Okay. I mean, anything. I mean, it's to me like being around that element in whatever form. I think was a thing that was satisfying. I didn't necessarily want to be behind the scenes, and I have since having left Film Threat, made films, and currently working on 2 web series. Yeah. And Film Threat certainly afforded the opportunity to meet a lot of my heroes. I have to say, some of them were horrible disappointments. I'm not going to say who. Right. And then a lot of them were just amazing experiences, change your life experience to having met and hung out with people who were my heroes. Now it's a matter of like, I almost see, there are people now I see like, oh, I'd really like to work with that person, or that person is someone like, oh, I'd love to get so-and-so to do a voice for this animated show. Like now I look at it differently. I look at it more professionally of like, okay, this is now a world that I'm embedded in and want to be a part of and take all this sort of bottled up creativity and express myself in a way that's not constantly, it's not interviewing other people. The premise for my show, and we were talking about before we started, is horribly flawed because I feel like people have either heard me on other shows or they just don't like the subject matter that week. And this is, I mean, I've told some of these stories before and some of this stuff is new that talking to you, but you're a great interviewer. Thank you. And you have an amazing voice too.
Thank you, but I couldn't possibly accept all that.
No, you need to take it. I'm telling you, I'm telling you right now that like you should be, you definitely have, especially with your voice. I mean, amazing, like take advantage of that.
You think I should somehow get enough money to buy a car doing that or something?
Yes,
get around to that?
at least
a motor vehicle could cost $1,000. How would I scrape that? I say that, but I was just getting a suit made for $1,500 in Koreatown, so my priorities, I guess, are elsewhere.
That is, wow, a $1,500 suit. I think that's,
But they make it for you, You've got the Korean man taking your measurements.
$1,500?
That's half the price of New York, or let alone London. Koreatown. If you want a suit made, Koreatown. And it helps if you speak a little Korean. I study Korean so I can get a good rapport going with the tailor, and I'm not getting a discount, but they're friendlier.
Wow, $1,500. I think the most I ever spent, once I spent $700 on a leather jacket. That was I remember being ridiculed by my friends, why'd you do that? It's I don't know. I have money. That was at the time.
If it fits well, if it's, it's a fit. Some of my career is writing about menswear, so don't let me go too far. But if the fit is right.
How does menswear pay? Where should I get Men's Warehouse? Is that where I should go?
You should go to someplace, anywhere other than Men's Warehouse.
I feel like those things, if they're doing these cheesy commercials, it's there's got to be a better place. There's got to be a place downtown that's you just go there, that place, and you'll get good clothes. They've got a decent wardrobe. But.
Depending on the grade you're going for. But, I'm telling you, Koreatown tailors, any tailor in Koreatown will do the alterations you need, will make you if you need a blazer, they'll make you that at one place, a suit, another place. I can give you recommendations.
Please.
But now I'm derailing myself here because
That's okay. I was trying to derail you. I want you, because I want to get a sense of you. There's too much of me on this show.
Well, we can record additional segments when you use this on your show. But I don't want to forget, because you mentioned Quentin Tarantino. We talked about Kevin Smith. You have a poster of Clerks up there. What was it like being in Los Angeles, embedded in the, broadly speaking, world of independent film, in that, now regarded as a golden moment of the 90s in America for, the indie boom, shall we say?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Filmstrut was around during that boom, but that's actually not a poster from Clerks that you see up there. That's actually a poster from my film, My Big Fat Independent Movie.
Oh, as you parodied the Clerks poster?
I parodied the Clerks poster.
Makes much more sense that you have that than a Clerks poster.
Yes. In fact, what I'll do before you leave, I'll give you I've got these postcards where there were parodies. For My Big Fat Independent Movie, we did these postcards that were parodies of other independent movies.
Oh, excellent.
I'll give you a set of those.
This is what happens when you watch a movie just on a disc. You never see the actual cool stuff you had to make to promote the movie.
Right. Well, I think if you get the 2-disc set of My Big Fat Independent Movie, you get these little collector cards. But which I actually have to buy online. I have to, as I keep, I'll lend it out and then never get it back.
But I wanted to bring up My Big Fat Independent Movie because you lived through this moment in U.S. cinema that a lot of people my age look back on as wow, what happened that went away? Why isn't American indie film still robust?
Well, there are financial reasons for that. There's a lot of, I think there was a whole indie film crash where so much of the content was the same. And I think even when My Big Fat Independent Movie came out, it's that was almost the end of indie film. I feel like when a genre dies, it's because, we were making fun of cliches, which is people are on the road. There's 2 hitmen going to pull a botched robbery. It's indie film doesn't have to just be all that. And it's funny because when we were covering it, those guys were nobodies. I mean, Kevin Smith was a kid who made Clerks and got lucky selling it at Sundance. And Quentin Tarantino was making Reservoir Dogs, which he had originally planned to shoot in Super 8 because he was so frustrated with being a guy working at a video store, just trying to get, writing scripts and trying to get things made. So Film Threat was invited to the set during the making of Reservoir Dogs. So we covered these people when they were nobodies. And now, of course, they're, indie film legends. Right. And so it was a golden moment. I don't know. I feel satisfied in the sense that we were around to support those filmmakers. And I just hope they're nice to me when I see them. Kevin Smith's always nice to me. I haven't seen Quentin in a while.
Why has, and you might not even agree about the premise of this question, but why has only Quentin Tarantino maintained his head of steam from that time?
I'll have a very specific answer to that because I don't think he makes his choices based on, I think Kevin Smith fits in this category too. Kevin and Quentin, they're not making their choices based on, I want to make a big movie and make a bunch of money. A lot of people will make an indie movie. They'll make an indie movie that gets some acclaim and some notice. They get hired to do a big studio movie and then they're part of that system. And I feel like both Quentin and Kevin haven't made their choices that way. Quentin has not made a movie for Marvel yet. Although if he did, it would be
fucking badass movie. If Quentin Tarantino did a Marvel movie, it'd be amazing. But Quentin has decided, I'm going to make movies that I write. Kevin Smith in that same regard. I mean, they're two vastly different filmmakers, but they've each taken the road of, I'm not making these choices from a commercial standpoint. I'm making it because this content is so close to me personally. And so they've taken a step forward in that regard, and they've DIY'd it. They've decided, like, they could be, and there were always rumors of Quentin doing some big mainstream thing and being handed something to direct. And he hasn't done it. I mean, it's content that he generates. Same thing with Kevin. And I feel that's a different kind of choice. It's not like someone saying to Chris Nolan, okay, do the Batman franchise. And he did an amazing job. I mean, the last film is highly flawed. We could have a conversation. But the path of most indie filmmakers is, I'm making a showcase film to get hired by a studio. And then the studio system, you live or die pretty quickly, and mostly die quickly.
Is there any rhyme or reason to what you're finding exciting in what you're watching now? Even if we just say movie-wise, whether it is a movie a kid made and put on the internet, or whether it is a huge studio release that costs $100 million. Is there a place where exciting movies are coming from for you, or is it just like anywhere? I just got to watch a lot of stuff.
The internet. The internet, when I've seen, I saw a short made by a band where it's effectively a POV shot of a guy. It's like an action movie, but shot POV. So imagine like a first-person view shooter movie, but it's actually live action. That was incredible. I couldn't tell where they made all the cuts, although they had to have made cuts. The best stuff now is online. I mean, I think that's also where lazy, TV executives will look for development of animated shows or other stuff, that the content that's upcoming, and or studios looking for directors, mostly foreign directors. I'm not kidding, to come over here and make movies because they're just more willing to play. I really feel that's like you're finding a lot of the great stuff online, not so much at film festivals or in indie film.
Well, that's it for this week's Crash. I really want to thank Colin Marshaell from Notebooks on Cities and Culture. You can follow him at Colin Marshaell. You can find Notebooks on Cities and Culture on Facebook, and you can follow him, his blog, at blog.colinmarshaell.org. Also, his column, Pod Thoughts. You look that up on MaximumFun.org. Okay, as promised, I am now in Los Angeles. I made the trek from Detroit. I also want to thank Mike White, actually, for having a conversation with me in the car at a rest stop. That's something, never done that before. That's kind of odd, but it was a great conversation. Look up everything about Mike White, Impossibly Funky, and Cashiers du Cinemart. Okay, I arrived into Los Angeles, set my DVR, watched Breaking Bad's series finale twice, and I have to say I thought it was absolutely brilliant. My prediction was wrong. I think part of it, I was sort of half right, actually. I did not predict that. I thought that basically Walt's punishment would have been that he would have lived and seen everyone around him destroyed. It was kind of the flip. He got pretty much everything he wanted, in terms of like he defeated the meth morons who'd taken over his business. He got his revenge. He set things right with his family in terms of getting them money. And there were some great cameos in there too, which I thought were awesome. I don't want to ruin too much about it, but I do want to tell you my thoughts. And then I predicted that he would have lived, that actually that would have been his torture, that he beat cancer, that he actually beat the system in terms of the criminal case against him, and he would have had to live. But actually, I think that, in a way, he committed suicide. The way that he took out the meth heads, the meth drug dealers, it sort of led to his own death. So he really, and he saved Jesse. I thought Jesse, it was great actually. Aaron Paul's performance in it, he had the fewest lines I think of any character, but the most weight. He really didn't have a lot to say. That dream sequence where he makes this, he's working on this perfect. He's making this wooden box, and the way they shot it, you could practically smell the wood of this beautiful piece that he was making, this wooden box, and somehow represented the things that he wanted to achieve in life, like a past moment of happiness for him, and then cut right to this horrible. He's in bondage, and he's being forced to make meth for these assholes, and he's just getting the shit kicked out of him daily. It's just phenomenal. His scream at the end of the show, his sort of scream of sort of pain, it was a million emotions at once. That he conquered and got revenge against Todd, that asshole. I thought was a great, and the final shot of the show. It's even better. I will say it's better on second viewing. It's the final shot, the pulling up. I mean, you really see Walt is okay. I left everything as best as I could. Bravo to Vince Gilligan and everyone involved in Breaking Bad. I think it's a shining example of how television can transcend and go beyond. I really wish the movies were more like this. I mean, I see some television that you see these days is just much better than experiences I've had going to the movies. I almost think that, they could get back to the days way back when in the 30s when there were serials. I mean, something like Breaking Bad, I wonder if you could have shown it at the theater. Because they did do public screenings, actually. There's a public screening, actually, that's part of a promotional event with AMC that was at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery that Vince Gilligan and a bunch of other people involved in the show attended, and they did an outdoor screening. I think that I think when something hits a cultural spark like Breaking Bad did, because of all the themes in it, I think really resonate today. Just the feeling of just being emasculated as a man, I think is what really resonates with a lot of people. And that's what I think. And I love how the show also bookended the first episode where it was his 50th birthday, and this final episode, which was his 52nd birthday. This time he was eating bacon that was real instead of this fake bacon in the first episode that tasted like Band-Aids. It was great. I mean, they wrapped everything up in, I think, a very satisfying way. So fantastic. So I want to thank you all for listening to the show. Let you know that PodCRASH is part of the Sideshow Network. Check them out at sideshownetwork.tv. Also get the Sideshow Network app for iPhone and iPad. You can also get the PodCRASH app for iPhone, iPad, Android devices, and new on Kindle. So look it up on Amazon.com. Get your free PodCRASH app. I'm going to be at the LA Podcast Festival this weekend. Go to lapodfest.com. Check that out. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, October 4th through 6th in Santa Monica. Get information there. I'm gonna be crashing actually probably I think about 4 podcasts. I'm going to be doing about 4 different podcasts and some panels, but everything's up on the site. Also be doing a stand-up show on Thursday, October 3rd, as part of the Keith and the Girl show. Stand up and I believe they're doing a podcast. I don't know. You know what? I'm on the roster, so I'm just going to be there. You can look that up. Go to keithandthegirl.com and for information about tickets for that. You can. These plugs are too long. Just Google me, Chris Gore, PodCRASH. Thank you for listening. And one final thing, let's get out of here.
Here is the knowledge you seek.
Hey, if you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the person who's a big Breaking Bad fan, and also you're a huge fan of podcasts, which is why you're probably going to be at the LA Podcast Festival. And if you're still listening to this, you and I are a lot alike, and I think you should be rewarded. So here you go. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036. I will return your self-addressed stamped envelope with the PodCRASH Fan Club kit. It's now in limited quantities, and there's no limit to how many you can get. Send me a large envelope with lots of postage on it, and I'll send you a pile of them. Give them out to your friends. but only available for a limited time, so you should take advantage of it. And if you're still listening, here's a bonus piece of audio from Notebooks on Cities and Culture. Later.
And this is weird also, like all that encouragement from my mother, and then also just hanging out at this movie store. Once a week I would go to this movie store. I discovered a movie theater called the Punch and Judy Theater. The Punch and Judy played, retrospectives screenings of movies like James Dean's East of Eden. And I remember a John Waters Film Festival, and I was like, well, who's this John Waters? I saw Pink Flamingos on the big screen when I was a kid, and it destroyed me. It really, really was troublesome. I was 16 years old, and I found it disturbed me, not because of the events in it, but I thought, how could people think that way and make movies like this? This is bizarre.